And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Palms down. Good evening. Oh my God. What's with how many Delta Beta Tau people are there? Just happy to see our college group representing. How long has it been since you've been here?
It's been a minute.
Been a minute. How's madness been?
Terrible.
Terrible. It's funny because the topic I was gonna, when you haven't been here in like 10 years. So today's the day where like all the people who've been peaceful and happy for the last handful of years decided to come back because they had nothing better to do. It's actually funny because the thing that was just in my mind as I was doing my offerings is that I said this to somebody earlier that, we go through our lives and people come into meditation or Buddhist practice when they're having challenges or difficulties usually. If everything is perfectly peaceful and happy in your life, you probably wouldn't end up here, right? It just doesn't typically work that way. And so we have stress, anxiety, sadness, depression, chaos, whatever you want to call it in our lives, and we end up looking for something, someplace to hopefully learn how to find a sense of peace and happiness within our own lives. And then things are going well for a while. Then you kind of disappear, right? You don't see them for 6 months or a year or 5 years. And then they come, back. Somebody recently, and I shared this story earlier, this person been around for years. And we didn't see him for about 6 months. And he came back, and some of you might have been here when I shared this, but I said, you're back, what happened? And he said, my wife told me I needed to go back, right? And the reason I bring this up is that no matter what challenges you're facing in your life, if you get into a path where things are then kind of steady and, going pretty well, don't stop practicing. And I don't necessarily mean like showing up here, but try not to stop doing the meditation. Try not to stop exploring, the teachings of the Buddha or whatever path you're on. Because even when life is kind of steady and stable, you're going to have kind of that crash at some point in time. And the more you're prepared to deal with those moments, the easier that down moment becomes. And this is really the practice of diligence. And I think it's when you look at the 6 paramitas, generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, wisdom, diligence, I think, is one of the ones that's overlooked because it requires, when I say the word diligence, what word comes to mind? Perseverance. What else? Persistence. What else? Discipline. Challenge. Consistency. Work. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. So if we do this long enough, somebody might say, those are all wonderful words, but it requires work. And that's often the thing that we don't want to do. But keeping yourself mentally and emotionally stable and steady requires diligence and it requires work. If our life is a mess, you can't just meditate and fix everything. It requires ongoing work. And that's not always fun. But if you do this practice on a pretty regular basis, you'll see over time your life gets simpler. Less chaos, less struggle, less drama. But kind of explore diligence a little bit in your own life, and maybe we'll touch on that later, maybe not. But so good to see you all here. Welcome back to those who've mysteriously shown up after 10 years. So we'll start with the meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before we begin. If you've never sat before, maybe never sat here, nothing's going to happen to you. You won't float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working? Is this not working? Am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. Sounds, you'll hear them, right? Sounds inside the room, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with sounds and chaos. The practice of meditation is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Don't judge your practice when you don't ask yourself, am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on the cushions, often it helps slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward. Allows the back to straighten, shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap. If you're on the chairs or benches, also just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. I'll guide us as we begin. We'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth open or closed. Start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Gently guide the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgment. Just sitting. Breathing. Where's your mind? Return attention, focus to the breath. And when the body's still, rested, the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, the mind learning to settle, know what its it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, just as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. And most important, the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your days. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, it's quiet, calm, still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how you sit, hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada. It means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than anyone in this room, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for every one of us in this room, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in and where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. more stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. That's what we get. Now, most people respond to meditation quietly, peacefully, still. The question is, how do you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your days? And all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer. How you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. Imagine going a day without being disturbed by someone. Most of you probably won't even make it outside the temple before you're disturbed by someone. The night is still young. Meditation is not an escape, as often people think it is. Whatever problems you have in your lives, meditation doesn't fix them. It helps you become aware of them so you can then make changes within your life. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and every other person you encounter every moment of your life. This is why it's difficult. This is why it's a challenge. This is why it requires a tremendous amount of effort, of diligence, of work. This practice is about thinking good thoughts, speaking good words, and doing good deeds every moment of your life. Which, I don't know about any of you, but for me, that wasn't how I lived most of my life. So unless you've been doing nothing but thinking good thoughts, speaking good words, and doing good deeds for your whole life, you're going to have some challenges here. And it requires effort. We spend so much time trying to fix, change, control, manipulate everything and everyone else around us. Yet once we stop and work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. But again, that's where that work comes into play. We recognize every day there are things outside these walls and inside these walls that we don't like. People we don't like, places we don't like, views we don't like. And the question then is, how do you respond to them? There's this kind of false sense of, safety or security that occurs where we think if we come together in meditation and Buddhist practice and we explore it, that, in this nice little safe bubble, it's great. But this is, an hour or two of your week. It's not like this out there. And so we don't practice this here just to be locked in here. We practice this here so when we go through our days and everything out there challenges us and disagrees with us and argues with us and judges us and labels us and critiques us, that we have a sense of strength in our own mind and our own hearts to get through all of that. And when I made the comment earlier, about literally someone I've been, sitting with for on and off for 10 years. And, I've been saying the same thing for 10 years. Because that's all it is. There are millions of books out there and various schools of Buddhism and phenomenal teachers. And for me as a practitioner, all I can share is what I think is relevant in my life, which is the foundation of what do I think, what do I say, and what do I do? And it doesn't matter if you're Christian, if you're Catholic, if you're Muslim, if you're Jewish, if you're pagan, or if you don't believe in any of that. How do you go through your day? That's the practice, as I understand Buddhist teachings. And that doesn't change. To me, the fundamental basic teachings, the core teachings of the Buddha, that's hard enough as it is. For me, this isn't an intellectual game. It's not a pondering of different languages or cultures or, the Buddhist teachings are pretty simple. They're very direct, very straightforward. And often we can get too wrapped up in our head trying to figure everything out. What did he mean by this? What did he mean by that? What do these people mean? What do those people mean? Look at the intention behind your words and your actions. Focus on that for the rest of your life. To me, that's the diligence. What am I thinking? What am I saying? What am I doing every single moment? And then your world and the world around you begins to change a little bit. But again, that's where that work comes into play, the diligence. You know, I loved all the pretty words everybody threw out for diligence, and then I'm glad Jim finally chimed in with work. Otherwise, we'd still be sitting here and I'd be asking you for, words to define diligence. But to me, it's work. And but it's beneficial work, because I find this practice and life to be much more enjoyable when you're kinder and gentler to things around you. So to me, that's the benefit. So I'd rather just stop there and open up to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that's on your mind that I can address, and we'll go from there. Yes, sir. Welcome back.
So I'm in a period of time where I was on this journey, and this journey is sobriety. And I'm entering a new part of my sobriety where I'll be in a sober living environment. And the past couple of months in rehab, I've been like, I can't wait to go, can't wait to leave rehab, I can't wait. And now that the time is getting closer, I'm getting a lot more nervous, because I am turning 21 tomorrow, and it's everything kind of new. I'm gonna be like kind of my own, like not my own spot, but it'll be basically like being on my own for the first time. And I don't know if I'm like completely ready. There's a lot of like, I just don't know.
Yeah.
A lot of things right now.
Sure. So leaving rehab, entering into a sober living, turning 21 tomorrow. I'm not sure how that lines up with sobriety, because I know you haven't been drinking up to now anyways. Happy birthday tomorrow. And you're not sure if you're ready. Does that sum it up? Yeah, you're not ready. First say that. Embrace the truth that says, I am not ready for this. Does that make sense? Are you ready for it?
No.
No. But can that be okay? Absolutely. To me, it's more, I'll start with this. It's more practical and more real, more honest, more truth to say, I'm not ready for this. Instead of trying to trick yourself into thinking you're ready. I'm not ready. I'm scared. I'm afraid. I'm going to be on my own. And this is going to suck, because I don't know how I'm going to get through this. Does that describe a little bit? Those are my words, but, right? And then with that in mind, you can begin to build a network and a Sangha community around you that can be helpful and beneficial, right? I've never been in recovery, but I've worked in that environment for 20 plus years. And as you know, we have a huge recovery community here. Continue to surround yourself with people and places and things that are supporting this path and this practice that is healthy for you right now. And know that it's going to be difficult. But if you go one day at a time, one moment at a time, and again, put yourself around people and places, right? The sober living home when you're trying to stay sober, good idea, right? Single place by the beach when you're trying to stay sober, not a good idea, right? So begin to see your life that way of what are the choices I'm making that are going to be beneficial for my sobriety and my sanity, right? I take rehab. I've known people, seen them one day in treatment, inpatient, outpatient, whatever you want to call it, all the above. I've seen them one day, show up next day, and they're gone. And not because they checked out of the rehab program, right? But they checked out for good. That's the reality, right? That's the truth. is that there's always that fear. And I think the sooner that we embrace that fear and open up and express the fear, as you did last week and as you are again, tonight, the easier it will be for you to find comfort in friendships, fellowship, community that keeps you healthy and safe. But at the end of the day, you have to make these choices, right? But have some faith in yourself as well, and some belief that you've made it this far. You've chosen to start a sober path. You've chosen to enter, well, maybe mandated, but either way, you could go on the run. You've chosen to enter sober living. You've chosen to come here. So you've made some good choices. Keep making those every day, but just focus on tonight. Make good choices tonight. Does that make sense so far? The second thing I want to address, and I don't mean this in light of what staying clean or sober means, but you said you're in rehab, and the way I look at Buddhist practices, we're all in rehab from something. And I mean that very seriously. We're all trying to recover from some addiction, trauma, craving, desire, whatever it might be, right? And again, I don't mean that to minimize addictions, because they're no joke. But I think for all of us here, we're all trying to rehab and recover from something. And what that really is our hearts trying to open up, learning to be okay with ourselves, forgiving others, and learning to be patient. So, yeah.
So recently, I went on a job interview, and I think it went pretty well. But ever since that day, I've noticed that my mind is just centered on the results, and everything else in my life is just doesn't have meaning right now. Like I'm kind of consistently focused on that one goal, and I realized that I do that with even in school. Like when I have an exam, and I want to get the results. I don't care about my partner. I don't care about my bills or anything. It's just I'm focused on that one thing, and it becomes that center. And I know to be a healthy person, you need to find balance. You need to find balance in everything. But how do I get to that point around? What do you suggest?
What time do you show up here on Tuesday nights typically?
Me?
Yeah. What time do you get here on Tuesday nights?
Like 6:45.
That's phenomenal. Could you be here at 6:40 next Tuesday?
Okay.
Could you come downstairs and find me at 6:40?
Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to give you a broom. And I'm going to ask you can always decline, right? I'm going to ask you to go outside and sweep. Because when you're sweeping, what are you not focused on?
You're just focused on sweeping. So you're not focused on the job or other things.
There's a word I'm looking here for. You're focused on what? A lot.
Oh, myself.
You. Don't be offended. Everybody else is here also for that same reason, right? I'm just using you as an example because, you've been at this enough now and you can handle it. So we enter this practice because we're focused on me, me, me. I this, I that, I want this, I need that. If I don't, I have, it's all me. 16 years ago, I started going to the temple right down the street. I showed up. All they did was gave me stuff to do. It wasn't like, how can I make this better in my life? How can I fix this? How can I get what I want? How can I achieve? How can I stop suffering? Never asked those questions. I didn't have time. They gave me a broom. They gave me a mop. They gave me a thing to scrub toilets with. They told me to go hang pictures on the walls. They gave me stuff to do that didn't have to do with what?
Me.
Me. And I stayed in that practice for the last 16 years as much as possible. Now, if I spend 3 hours thinking about me, that might suck. The thing most people miss with Buddhist practice is, especially if you're new to Buddhism, is the Buddha taught that we suffer because the sense of self, the I, the ego, me, me, me. And yet here we are, week in and week out. What are all our questions about? What's the first word that comes out of most people's mouth when they ask a question?
Right.
I. Right? Again, I mean, don't stop asking these questions. I have to introduce this because it's a common thing. I have this problem, I have that problem. I need this, I have that. I'm afraid of this, I'm afraid of that. I can't get this, I can't get that. I'm worried. I. And the Buddha said you're suffering because you're so focused on yourself. Everyone in this room at some point in their life has done something to help somebody else. And when you do that, how do you feel? Phenomenal. And then you go back to thinking about yourself, and it's like, I don't know about this stuff, right? I don't care if you sweep here or 5 houses down, right? Maybe there's someone down the street that wants their house swept. The idea is take yourself out of you. What can you do to help others? That is, to me, the heart of this practice. That is the Bodhisattva path, right? To live for the benefit of all others. And if you try that repeatedly throughout your days, you'll find in those moments that you're not doing something for you, you'll probably feel better. And then you do that more often, and then you'll feel better more often. And then you'll be able to come back and find some balance that says, okay, well, I can't sweep the temple all day long. I got to do some other stuff that involves my life. But you'll have a different perception of it. And you won't know that from me saying it. I didn't listen to some master tell me to go do good things for 16 years. I just had to shut up, get over my pride, get over my ego, get over thinking I'm the most important person in the world, get over thinking that everybody should do what I want. And I needed to sit down, shut up, and do stuff for others. That worked for me. So, as always, I can always share my experience with it. I'll see you Tuesday, 6:40.
I'll be there.
Other questions, thoughts? We do have more than one room in case anybody else wants. Yeah.
Would you talk about the emaciated Buddha?
Yes. It's one of my favorite things to do. So this Buddha back here, right behind me, is called the emaciated Buddha, right? And it's a little bit shocking to people. Who here has never seen this statue? So a good handful of you have never seen a statue like this, right? And we think of a Buddhist statue, and maybe you think of, good luck, happy birthday tomorrow. Nice to meet you. The other one. Yeah. When we think of a Buddhist statue, and often it looks very pretty and beautiful, or you see the big belly Buddha. I hate to break it to you, that's not the Buddha. That was Hotai. He was a monk in China about 1,000 years ago, right? The emaciated Buddha is when the Buddha was 29 years old and he left home. And he's roaming the base of the Himalayan mountains and he's hanging out with 5 other dudes. They thought that, and again, this was the way of life at that time was Hindu. That was the religion, that was the belief, that was the practice. That's what the Buddha was raised in. Siddhartha Gautama was raised Hindu. And they thought that if they overcame attachment to physical form, that would be their way to enlightenment, to awakening. So they did lots of yogi kind of ascetic practices. They would stand on one leg for 3 months at a time. They would hang from trees for months at a time, right? They would do things to try to really stretch the limit of what the body could handle. And it's said that they lived on 1 grain of rice a day. And that he was so skinny, you could take your fingers front to back and that they would touch, right? So they're roaming around, they come to a river. Somebody offered him food. And he was like, I'm paraphrasing all of this, but he was like, I'm hungry, and I want to eat. And everybody was like, no, we can't eat, right? We're not going to eat. We took this vow. He said, well, I'm hungry. I'm going to take the bowl and I'm going to set it in the river. And if the bowl goes against the stream, I'm going to eat. Sets the bowl, goes against the stream, he decides to eat. And all his buddies were like, no, you traitor, you sellout, you food eater, you know, they're like yelling at him. And so he decides to eat. Those 5 guys left him. He regained his physical health, right? Then a little while after that, those 5 guys, in the image above the opening back there on the door, above the exit sign, is those 5 disciples. Those are the same guys he was with. They left him. And then they came up to him one day and they saw Siddhartha sitting under the tree. And they're like, there's Siddhartha. He looks like he's figured something out. Let's sit down. And they sat down. He taught the 4 Noble Truths, the core of the heart, the first teaching of the Buddha, right? Life is suffering. There's a cause, greed, anger, ignorance. There's an ending to it, liberation, right? And then there's the path, the Eightfold Path. So he taught this to these 5 disciples. They became his first 5 disciples. He then continued on for 45 years, and he died at 80, right? Now, what this represents is him at a time in his life where he was physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, potentially near death. And he discovered in Buddhism what we call the middle path, right? You have a guitar string, it's too tight, you try to play, snaps. Too loose, no sound. The middle path is different for all of us in this room. There's no, this is what the middle path is, because we have to look at where we are in our lives, right? If we spend $50 on a meal, maybe we could spend $25. And those $25 could feed people who have no food. If we spend $50 on a shirt, maybe we could spend $20. And the $30 could buy shirts for those who have no shirts. If you have 20 pairs of shoes in your closet, I'm sure nobody in the room here has that. Maybe you could give 10 of them away and probably still live with 10 pairs of shoes. Might be tough, but you can do it, right? So the middle path is critical. Not to starve ourselves, but also not to live in excess. The reason when we opened the Dharma Bum Temple 13 years ago that we chose this Buddha is that it represented us, right? As you've heard me say, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers. We are practitioners. Simple, humble practitioners doing our best, who are often physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually near death, just like he was. And it became very motivating to us and inspiring that instead of sitting with this enlightened Buddha like we were trying to become him, we had to face who are we? And be very real with the fact that we were doing things in our lives that may be killing ourselves, literally or metaphorically. So he became the Buddha for the Dharma Bum Temple, the emaciated Buddha, to remind us to find our balance. And instead of chasing, right, kind of back to the question earlier, instead of chasing this, I want to awaken someday, and I want to end all suffering, can I even hold up a mirror and look at myself and say, this is why I'm suffering, this is how and why I am starving myself to death, whatever that means to you in your life. It's not just about food, we know that. There are areas of our lives that we are starving ourselves. Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, whatever that may be, find it. Because if you can find that and find balance there, your suffering will decrease. So that's the emaciated Buddha, very special for us. And so when we came here, and you know, we had 2 locations, the old Buddha for you, we had a different Buddha. So we came here, people asked, which Buddha are you going to put up there? Well, of course, emaciated Buddha. But then we added some compassion behind him because God knows we all need that. Yeah. Thanks for asking that when there wasn't 30 seconds left in class. Yeah. Other questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with?
So the trap of, oh, my life is going good, so I don't need to practice is very easy to fall into. Well, how have you been able to not fall into that?
To fall into the trap of my life is easy.
No, I guess just constantly being able to remind yourself that you're still a student and
Yeah.
you probably will be forever.
I think I've learned over the years to just be honest with myself and not get lost in the idea of what happiness is, right? You know, if I look at my life in my early 20s to mid 20s to late 20s, happiness meant something different to me at that time. You know, happiness was more about, it was a physical sense of security. You know, the money I had, the things I bought, the people I was around, the places I went, the experiences I had, those things to me at that point in time told myself that I was happy, because that's what everything around me was telling me to believe would make me happy. All the media, all the advertising, all the friends, all the things I was around, that's what was telling me was happy. But no matter how much of all of that I did, like at the end of the day, I was still depressed and miserable. You know, it didn't matter how much I had or went or whatever experience, I still went to bed depressed and I woke up depressed. And I was just masking that depression and unhappiness with the experiences. And I would justify to myself that, well, if I've got this and I went there and I did that, then clearly I'm happy. Because everybody else could look at me and be like, look at Jeff, he's so happy. Look at all the stuff and freedom and things he does. It's like, no, I'm not happy, I'm miserable. But all of those things were revolving around me. And so that's kind of, I had to look back, kind of going through it, that's my lens, looking back on it now, what was going on. And when I was in it, it was really hard to pull out of that. But I eventually just, and you've heard the story time and time again, woke up one day and said, I'm just done living my life in the same routine of, you know, going out and going to some club and chasing someone around and waking up the next day and feeling like crap. Like, I'm done doing that because it's not working. It wasn't making me happy. And so I went, I've always been a very, you know, kind of all or nothing. So I just went all in, and I don't suggest that for people. You know, I went all in and just completely, there was no middle path in me starting Buddhism. You know, it was like, I'm either all that way or all that way. Now looking back on it over the years, and I found more of a balance, I think that's important too. But early on, I had to pull myself out of that world completely. And I think that the way that staying motivated, you know, this helps. And when I say this, what I mean by that is, you know, we see 500-700 people a week coming through this place, and we're all struggling. And that's also a reminder to me that it's so easy to potentially slip back into that place of where you're depressed or angry or sad or miserable. But to continue to make life less about the self and more about others. But that transition away from it is tough. Because it's so, I mean, it's an addiction. Lifestyles are addictions. You know, I mean, we can look at things we're addicted to, not even necessarily drugs or alcohol, whatever it might be, but we're addicted to the stories that we tell ourselves about who we think we are. We're addicted to making sure that we look a certain way, buy certain clothes, go to certain places. We're addicted to buying into a construct that has been set up for us. You know, the areas that we were raised in, the parts of town that we grew up in. They all come with kind of stories about who and how we're supposed to be. And to unplug from that is really difficult. But I eventually had to make the choice where I just said, like, well, I just don't want to live depressed and miserable anymore. That sucks. You know, and so for me, I turned my back on my closest friends at that time, you know, for like 2 years. I was like, sorry guys, nope, I'm done. I can't do it. You know, because I didn't have the strength to kind of still be around them and not do the things that we were doing. You know, I had to unplug completely. You know, playing to Taiwan helped at that time also. You know, yeah, but good luck. Yeah. Yeah, then we'll close.
But, and this is just me, don't you sometimes have to go through those experiences in order to realize this isn't working?
Yes, as long as you don't, my suggestion is not to use that as a justification.
No, right.
Huh?
If you're going through it and you're wonderful and happy, why change? If you're going through it and it's not working for you, say, okay, the way I'm living my life, I'm buying this, I'm buying that, I'm going, I'm not happy here.
Right, well, what I'm saying is nobody can answer for you. When you go to bed every night, when you wake up every morning, whether you're with somebody or not, is your mind and heart happy? I'm not telling, what I'm asking and what I'm saying is to ask yourself that very honestly. And if you are happy and everything is wonderful in your life, you're probably not sitting in this room right now. Unless somebody dragged you here and promised you pizza and beer afterwards, right? Which is always the case. You two looked at each other, right? So I'm just suggesting that, and I've heard that line of thinking for years. We are very good at justifying and manipulating to ourselves why we're doing something and saying, well, this is just part of my journey. So I'm going to be a complete, a-hole to people and just say, well, this is just my path right now, but I have to go through this. So then I'll be a spiritual enlightened being later, but right now I'm going to treat you like crap. Be honest with ourselves is what I'm suggesting. And be very careful about how these unenlightened, greedy, angry, ignorant minds can trick yourself and justify to you why you may think everything is wonderful. Because it might not be. You don't have to go through things. Back to the way you questioned it. You go through things. You choose what you do after that. But I'm just not a fan of justifying, well, I had to go through that to get to this. No, I didn't. I could have been a nice guy without being an a-hole. But I chose to be that, and now you choose to be this. And this way doesn't excuse that behavior. Doesn't make up for it. Yeah. Do one last question if anyone has anything. Question or thought before we close.
So it took me 10 years to figure that one out.
10 years to figure that one out?
Yeah.
What about going from the a-hole to the nice guy?
Yeah, you don't have to go through it.
Yeah. But 10 years, you're still only 26, and you're like ahead of the curve, man. Yeah, it's phenomenal. There's a few people in this room who are not 26 that are thinking, man, I wish I learned that when I was 26. So it's always, and that's the thing with wherever we're at in our lives, at whatever age, whatever stage, every day there's an opportunity out there to be nice or not nice to people, and every day we're going to be challenged. And that's why, to me, it's so important to just keep to the fundamental, basic core teachings of this practice of just being nice to people. It's 8 o'clock. You're going to have so many hours out there right now of things that are going to happen that can trigger you and set you off. And the practice is to come back to that's their mess and their life. This is my mess and my life. So yeah. But I'm glad you're back. Yeah. So we'll join palms as we close. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to Max during his time of suffering, and to Marilyn and their entire family during this time. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering.